Some barber that calls me Puppy asked me to make a guide for Doomfist, so now that I have this sufficient motivation, here you go. Welcome to a more comprehensive Doomfist guide. My gamer credentials that allow me to make a Doomfist guide without looking like a complete dumbass are as follows. 1. Grandmaster. Number 2. I've one-trick Doomfist since Season 6 when I came back to Overwatch after a break. I never played Doomfist before the nerfs. And number 3. I've got over 300 hours on Doomfist, most of which is solo queue, one-tricking and competitive matchmaking. Okay, so with that out of the way, I want to break this guide up into 3 parts. First of all, I want to talk a bit about Doomfist's role in the team, his defining traits and the different ways that you can approach playing him in any given team comp. Secondly, I'll talk about matchups with each of the heroes, showing who Doomfist counters and is countered by, and I hope you pay attention to this part in particular, because Doomfist matchups are really poorly understood in the Overwatch community. In the last section, I'll just go over some miscellaneous tips and tricks, do's and don'ts, that sort of thing. Okay, and I just want to say up front that if you want some map knowledge oriented guides, then that is not what this guide is going to be about. I reckon that's better left to Brandito's channel and Discord. He's a high-ranked Doomfist streamer, and his Discord server is full of Doomfist mains who are always on the lookout for cool and clever spots on all of the different maps. So if you want to have that kind of information about Doomfist, then head over to that. I'll leave some links in the description for Brandito videos and Discord channel. But this video is not going to cover anything like that, so if you're looking at that, I'm sorry. Part 1, your role in the team. Okay, Doomfist is a really misunderstood character. Most people think that Doomfist is just a dive hero like Genji or Tracer, but with a bit more bulk and staying power in exchange for being really shit. In reality, Doomfist is probably the most versatile hero in the game, but take that opinion with a grain of salt because I'm a Doomfist man and he's the only hero I've actually sunk hundreds of hours into and understand to this extent. Anyway, I like to break up Doomfist roles into a few different styles, and I've got 6 of them to read out here. 1. Dive, which is the most popular and probably what you'll be doing most of the time. 2. Antidive, where you stay in the middle of your team and you peel for enemy tanks that dive your backline. Number 3, frontlining, where you stay forward in the team and you pressure or disrupt the enemy frontline. 4, defense and camping, where you defend and camp. And 5 is mid to late fight brawling, where you just attack whatever the shot call says to attack until the fight's over. And 6, fucking around, which involves stuff like gliding around like an idiot in unintended locations and spending half a minute trying to get into any position where you can attack a Pharah. You know, dumb stuff like that you see in the streams. Okay. Number 1, dive. Okay, diving as Doomfist. This is what everyone with 10 hours or more on Doomfist will know how to do at some rudimentary level. It's pretty self-explanatory. You use your abilities to jump at individual enemies, preferably squishies and preferably separated from the team, and then you use whatever abilities are left to come back. Often you put all 3 abilities on cooldown, and for the record I call this sinking kit. I'm going to refer to sinking kit a bunch throughout the video. And then you either wait until you get all your abilities back to return to your team, or you just die and make it a trade. Obviously you don't want to make any trades if the enemy team has the res up, or if they've got spawn advantage and the kill in question isn't terribly important, that sort of thing. It's the sort of thing you got to just use your own judgment on on a case by case basis. Okay, people think that the only way to die with Doomfist is to use the air slam to reach an opponent and then use uppercut and hand cannon to kill them and rocket punch back toward your team. However, if you don't have an air slam spot available, and for the record I'll go over the slam stuff much later in the video, so if you don't have the opportunity to slam into where you want to go, or if you're pushing into a choke with a small arch like Volskaya A for instance, then you can get in with the rocket punch and use the uppercut and hand cannon only to get the frag, and then slam back to your team or wherever else you want to go. Of course it's harder to pick up the enemies and frag them this way, but it is a perfectly viable method of diving. As a dive, Doomfist you can choose to dive either with or without your team. If the enemy team is not stupid, then they'll try to make some measures to hinder your ability to get opening picks before you even push in. Really obvious example would be McCree standing right next to the Zenyatta, ready to flashbang you if you get close. I would say a general rule of thumb is to not dive alone if there are any enemies near your target that have a CC ability off cooldown, or if there's just a whole bunch of enemies in one place, full stop. So in this situation you should wait for your team to make some space for you before you start going in, or just go alongside your friendly neighborhood dive tanks and let them soak up some CC for you. On the other hand, if you do actually see a genuinely vulnerable opponent, then you can feel free to dive them alone. The obvious choices are Zenyatta, Hanzo and Soldier, but anything that doesn't have an ability of their own ready to either escape your attack or fight back is worth diving on your own like this. So I'll get into more of that sort of stuff in the hero matchup section. And don't be afraid to just leave the fight if you're not getting any value out of your dive, because if you stay too long, it's very easy to die. And that's something that I want to make a super strong point of highlighting, is that you need a lot of like foresight and discipline to be able to dive sensibly with this character. It's really easy to get punished as Doomfist by characters like McCree and Roadhog and anyone else. That's just examples. And so you have to be on your toes all the time. Don't fuck up, don't feed, don't die. That's what I'm trying to say if you're playing Dive Doomfist. Number 2, the Antidive. Antidive Doomfist, contrary to popular belief, is really good. Since Doomfist isn't particularly strong against Tracer or Genji, he doesn't usually take the role of fighting the DPS that get in close, but rather the tanks that get in, namely Winston and D.VA, with Winnie being the easier target of the two. Think of Doomfist in this role the same way that you'd think about a Reaper. Within this role, Doomfist doesn't get as much damage out as Reaper does, but on the flip side, he's harder to pin down, easier to leave the fight with, and has CC and boop abilities to his disposal. And there's not really a lot to say about this role. Just stick with your team's backline or kind of in the middle of the team or some high ground where you can get back there and wait for the enemy tanks to dive. Doomfist has a fantastic synergy with Brigitte in this scenario, in that he can take on the tanks and she can deal with the DPS. If your backline is crumbling every team fight and you feel like you aren't able to get much done, then you should probably switch to playing anti-dive like this. Refrain from running way out in front and searching for things to frag, just stay back or at some off to the side position and wait for the fight to play out a little bit before you get involved. See what happens? Chances are someone's going to attack your healers and then you can go and fight them. So that's the basic idea behind this role. I just want to make a quick point about what I said before, how you can stand off to the side. If you're not with your healers physically, then it might look to an enemy tank or whatever that you're not protecting them. So you can pretend that you're not actually protecting your healers and kind of bait the enemy Winston and D.Va or whatever to come in and attack them, and then you can get in and get involved and they won't be expecting that. So I recommend playing like that, it's good. Number 3, Frontline. Frontline Doomfist is what you should usually play if you're against a team that has a Reinhardt. It does sort of apply to Orisa and teams that have 2 or more off tanks, but it works best against Reinhardt in particular. So the idea with this style of play is that you just stick with your own team's frontline and try to either push their enemy main tank back or put their tanks out of position. So with Reinhardt in particular, Doomfist is a fantastic counter to him and can completely ruining the positioning super easily. And since Reinhardt is banking on that position to get anything useful done, that makes him a really good target for frontline play. So the default action against Reinhardt or whatever that you can take here is to just send fully charged rocket punches at the enemy main tank, pushing him back and charging up some ult for yourself. Then if you want, you can uppercut for Reinhardt, that'll get the shield out of the way for a bit. And then you can slam back to your team and wait for your cooldowns. If it's safe, you can also do another rocket punch just without the uppercut and slam while you're waiting for those cooldowns to come back, but of course don't get too deep with it or you'll get peeled for and owned. If there's a wall behind the enemy tank, then you can try to coordinate with a teammate like Zenyatta or Winston to help you secure a frag on that tank with just the punch on the wall. So the other thing that you can do while frontlining usually requires you to sync your entire kit, but it will pretty much guarantee a kill on a tank if you can pull it off right. So what you do is you air slam behind the enemy tank and then you uppercut them back towards your team. And so at this point your team can jump in and kill that tank. Most of the time you're going to need the rocket punch to push them far enough into your team to make a difference, or if you're pushing them off high ground to get them off that ledge. But of course if you can save that rocket punch, then do that and save your own life with it. So this is easiest to do with Reinhardt and Roadhog because I don't have any mobility or way to stop you from doing this. But it does also work against Zarya when the bubble is off, or Orisa when the fortify is off, and D.Va and Winston when they don't have their movement abilities up. For Orisa and D.Va, remember that there is a bug at the time of recording where if they are shooting, then they won't get as much knockback as they're supposed to. And this is a confirmed bug, it's not just how it's supposed to be, contrary to popular belief. Anyway, the one thing that you do need to remember when doing this is to always communicate with your team that this enemy tank is vulnerable, because if they don't peel for him, which they might not, because often people aren't really paying attention to what a Doomfist is doing at this point in the match, If they don't peel for him, then you know it's a free frag that just gets lost. So make sure you tell your teammate that this tank is vulnerable, let them peel and kill him. It's a risky thing to do. It's quite likely that you will die if you have to use your rocket punch, but if you're on offense and it's not overtime, then that's a good trade to make anyway, because your team has the spawn advantage and Doomfist is faster than any tank.
Number 4, defense and camping.
So this is, as you can imagine, mainly a role that you're going to be playing on defense. It's pretty much self-explanatory. You just camp in spots and wait for people to come past and rocket punch them into the nearest wall or whatever. So the best way that this works is you stand around a corner where you can punch a squishy that comes around it into a wall without them seeing you as they come past. Overwatch players, unlike Counter-Strike players, don't tend to check their corners very much, even at really high levels. So you can stand around a corner and reasonably expect their team to walk past so that you can get their healers at the back. You can just wait for all the tanks to have not looked at you and then get easy opening frags on their healers or whatever. So it's a lot easier than it sounds, and it's not restricted to just little rooms. You can do it in places where you can jump down from some high ground. This is really useful because it's really hard for the enemy team to stop you from jumping down with like a preemptive flash or whatever. So if you have a spot like this one on Anubis where you can just jump down and punch people into the wall, then absolutely go for that. On offense, you can still camp some spots like ones that you don't want the enemies to take, like particular high ground or whatever. And you can even camp spots from places where you can't actually see it. And so a really good example is this arch on Anubis A that Widowmakers like to shoot from. So you can stand on this ledge here, and when you hear Widowmaker use her hook, you can jump around and frag her and then go back. So try to be creative about your defending spots, and most of all, avoid falling into patterns that the enemy team is going to read over time.
Number 5, Brawl.
So once your whole team is fighting their whole team, what you should do here is just work with the shock callers and your own intuition to deal damage, build ult, get frag, shut down ults, and CC, blah blah blah. It's pretty self-explanatory play again, just requires you to focus and remain aware of what's going on and have good mechanical skill with the character. So the only real unique trait that Doomfist has over other heroes in this situation is that he can instantly kill people with the splat punch. So keep an eye out for opportunities to use that and try to put yourself in positions where you have a lot of opportunity to do it. So for example, on Hanamura's second point, you can stand right in the middle of the point and be able to rocket punch enemies into a wall at almost any angle, provided you can get high enough charge in your punch. And again, just like I said in the frontlining part, remember that D.Va and Orisa don't move very far if you punch them, and Mercy just doesn't move much in general because she's kind of broken. So make those 3 characters your low priority targets, and of course Bastion and Sentry or turret, whatever.
Number 6, being a useless piece of shit.
Okay, so this fantastic style of Doomfist is where you get to pretend that you're a top 500 streamer who's always popping off and carrying the team with sick plays that'll get you plenty of upvotes on the Reddit. So you go to unorthodox spots with bounces and 125s and all that, and try to fight more enemies than you can take on at once, get your funny highlights, and feed a whole bunch. It is of course possible to actually do well with this style of Doomfist play, but absolutely don't make it your priority, or you're going to be a big feeder and people aren't going to respect you very much. So there's some flashy fuck around spots that have genuine situational use. Just for sake of example, here's one on King's Row where you can initiate dives with a 125 onto a bunch of enemies that are in this little bend. Really easy to get into, and there's health packs nearby if you need to disengage and that kind of thing. So besides this situational use of these flashy fuck around spots, the other regular use of this style of Doomfist is to fight against enemy Pharahs. And I'm not gonna lie to you, Pharah does absolutely counter Doomfist. It's one of the hardest counters in the game. However, if you can reach the Pharah, then she's very easy to kill. So if you're gonna one trick Doomfist, then getting to Pharah is a skill that you should absolutely learn. And just for the record, this is not a guide to encourage people to one trick Doomfist. There's I one trick Doomfist, people that watch this guide is probably gonna be one tricking Doomfist, or some of them will be. So I thought I should point it out that Pharah is definitely something that you gotta learn how to deal with. So basically, the idea is that you go to the highest point on the map that you can access and just wait for her to be level with you before rocket punching to reach her, and then uppercutting and hand cutting to deal damage, blah blah blah. So I'll talk about that a bit more in the matchup sections, but that's the gist of it. I will just say now that it's very map dependent whether this actually works at all or not, because sometimes the highest point on the map that you can reach as Doomfist is way lower than any Pharah is going to be going. And sometimes, you know, they're just better at using boost than you are at staying alive while you do this stuff. So don't expect this to work all of the time. Expect it to work some of the time once you're good at it. That's what I will say about this.
One last note.
Don't take these 6 roles that I've just outlined as gospel. These are just 6 ways that I can categorize Doomfist's way of working in a team to make it easy to explain in a video like this. Play to your team comp's needs and take the enemy team comp into account as well when you're trying to think about how you want to approach using the character. Of course, don't always try to restrict yourself to these 6 modes. Feel free to be creative and just play to the situation. There's a lot of opportunity for creative plays with Doomfist, and he's got advantages over the other heroes that allow for, a huge amount of spots for him to really shine. Trying to play Doomfist in your own creative way will help you learn his limits and get better at reading the situation and foresight and that sort of thing, which is super important with Doomfist because it's incredibly easy to get punished and farmed on when you're playing him. So as I'm sure you know, Doomfist is notorious for being a quote-unquote bad hero, but it's for a good reason, and it's because if you don't have good foresight, restraint, and mechanical control over the abilities, you will die a whole lot and just be a feeder. So Doomfist players like that are what give him his bad reputation. Okay, time for the exciting part. Doomfist matchups are among the most poorly understood aspects of Overwatch gameplay, right up there with the concept of ping. And so I need to take some time to outline all of these heroes one by one so that you know who counters who and have a whole bunch of advice to work with on how to play against each particular character when you're playing Doomfist. So let's get right into it.
Offense heroes. The other Doomfist.
Fighting against other Doomfists is really fast paced and confusing, and it's something that you won't get much chance to practice because Doomfist is such an unpopular hero. So this is something that I imagine every Doomfist player is bad at because there's just not enough chance to practice and get good at it. Anyway, my best advice when playing against enemy Doomfist is to let them make the first move and then fight back based on what happens. Even better, don't even engage them immediately, just let them use some kit on your Winston or whatever and then get in and punish them. Obviously be careful engaging Doomfists that have more shields than you. Alright, Rocket Punch is a very valuable tool against the enemy Doomfist because it's easy to land, it outplays the other 2 abilities, and it will stun the enemy Doomfist for a bit. So let's imagine that you and the enemy Doomfist start charging rocket punches at each other. If you're in this situation, then you should let go at just the right moment so that you will just barely reach their Doomfist, even if it's not going to do that much damage. You want to be hitting him with this rocket punch as soon as possible. So you won't stalemate with the enemy Doomfist unless he's already loosed his punch. So if you hit him while he's still charging, then he'll get no value and you'll get some value. So of course you should expect him to lose early too, so don't just punch into a punch unless you're willing to take a stalemate. And that is something that you can just decide based on your position whether it's a good idea or not, based on the position relative to the 2 teams and maybe who's got Uppercut on cooldown if you're on a 1v1. If you happen to both Uppercut and start using hand cannon on each other, then I recommend again tapping the enemy Doomfist with a short punch to stun him so that you can get more damage in and put him out of position to get the headshots on you, because he's going to fall down a little bit and you'll have the high ground advantage over him. Okay, and one thing that I forgot to put in the script. If you have your Meteor and the enemy Doomfist has his Meteor, do not pop yours, because what he will do is he will pop his and he will put his on top of yours, and then you're going to be vulnerable for that little bit of time after the Meteor strike hits and before you are able to control yourself again. Likewise, if the enemy Doomfist uses his ult and you have yours available, pop yours and then go and land on top of his one so that he will die before he can move out of the way of it. And if you don't have your ult up, what you can do against an enemy Doomfist that's using Meteor is you can rocket punch him straight out of it, because that's your best bet at putting him into a stun rather than just dealing some normal damage to him after he comes out of it and is still vulnerable.
God awful Genji.
Genji is very strong against Doomfist. You could maybe even call him one of Doomfist's counters. I kinda don't, but he's definitely a hero that Doomfist is weak against. Genji has really precise control over his height in the air, which makes it very difficult to land any abilities on him. He can really easily stay out of reach of you, which lets him tickle you for a lot more damage than you're going to be able to tickle him for, because all you've got is a hand cannon and he's got his little ninja shurikens that just do more damage in that situation. So Genji is best attacked with a slam when he's not aware of you, or with a rocket punch when he falls into a place that you can actually attack him in. If you land a slam on a Genji and do your usual uppercut combo fight, then he's gonna use deflect if it's up. In this situation, you've got two choices. Either you can choose to rocket punch and shoot the hand cannon at him to kill him, or rocket punch away and engage him later. If you do use that rocket punch, then all of your abilities are on max cooldown now, and so you got to be very careful when you're doing that. Feel free to get aggressive on Genjis that are using the Dragon Blade. They won't expect you to actually start CCing and fighting them because they think they're invincible, but you can actually tank a lot of the damage as Doomfist, especially if you've got some personal shields stacked up ahead of time. Oh boy, that's a run-on sentence. I shouldn't have written that down. Anyway, a couple other tips. Watch out for the dash, of course, and keep a mental image of its range in your head because that's going to do plenty of damage and disorient you when you're fighting him. And if it's down, then you can actually use Meteor Strike on the Genji. It's something that people don't really think to do very often, but even if he double jumps, he's still going to take a lot of damage, enough to kill him from that, presuming that you've aimed it properly and all that. So, if dash is down, then Genji is actually an eligible target for the Meteor Strike. Yeah, that's all I have to say about Genji.
Motherfucker McCree.
McCree is one of the classic Doomfist counters and is a pretty simple matchup to fight against. He can kill you pretty easily before or while you engage with left click alone, but obviously his best weapon against you is the flashbang. If the flashbang is up, then it's very difficult for you to bait it out on your own. If you're playing on a dive comp, then I recommend letting your tanks attack him first to make him use that flashbang and then come in to clean him up. If flashbang is off, then McCree actually becomes a very easy kill, similar to a soldier or a Hanzo. If it is up, it's very difficult to kill the McCree unless you can get the jump on him with a rocket punch from behind or something like that. Anyway, one thing that you can do, but bear in mind this doesn't usually work against very high rank McCrees once you get into Grandmaster, is you can aim the Seismic Slam behind him and turn as you travel through the air so that it's going to face him when you land. Don't do this from too far away or he'll just flash you out of the slam, but if this does work, then he's either going to whiff the flash or the follow-up, which is the idea of this. Pointing that slam behind him and turning it around just makes it kind of disorientating because he doesn't know where he's supposed to attack you. Sometimes you can kill him before he even reacts with the flash, but you do need to land very close and get a great hand cannon shot over his face for this to work. Very similar to when you're fighting Tracer. If you want to use Meteor Strike on McCree, then what you should do is ask your teammates to let you know if he uses the roll. If that roll is on cooldown, then he doesn't have any way to escape your Meteor. Deadeye can be a real hassle to deal with when you play in Doomfist. Since you spend a lot of time floating around in the air as Doom, this will let McCree get easy solo frags on you with the Deadeye if he chooses to. Overall, McCree isn't too hard to deal with. A lot of people will swap to him from heroes like Soldier if they want to counter you. But so long as you play smart and don't get too aggressive on him, then he's probably not going to present too much trouble.
Pharaoh.
Alright, like I said before, there is no sugarcoating the fact that Pharah counters Doomfist pretty hard. It takes a pretty skilled Doomfist to even reach a Pharah, even with Meteor Strike on hand, and most of the time, she's going to shut you down and make you really want to pick McCree instead. Pharahs will usually stay higher than you can reach, but if you can get within melee range of them with Uppercut ready, then you can use it and shoot them a couple times, which will probably kill them even if they're being pocketed by the Mercy. It's something that takes a fair bit of practice to get used to, but once you get the knack of it, these frags will actually come quite easily. So the easiest way to do this is to go to high ground and wait until Pharah is horizontally even with you. If you're doing this, try not to draw any attention to yourself, try to stay around cover or whatever if you get the opportunity, so that she's not paying attention to you. From there, you can rocket punch to her, and then just uppercut and shoot away. If there's no high ground on a map, then you're probably going to have to do the famous move where you meteor to an otherwise inaccessible high spot and go to her from there. If you're descending at high speeds, this can be pretty tricky, so there's a timing aspect to it as well, and it can be tough. However, sometimes that is your only option for attacking the Pharah, and sometimes it's how you'll choose to use your Meteor, so it's something that you should get used to over time, even if it's a little niche thing. Sometimes you don't even have to rocket punch to reach the Pharah. If she isn't aware of you or just straight up ignores you because she's cocky, then she might even fly within range of you normally and you can just uppercut her right off the bat. It sounds completely ridiculous, but this actually happens in Master, and even Grandmaster Pharahs have done this to me, so don't expect this to happen, but it might happen, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, let's move on. The other normal way to get Pharahs is to use the rocket punch when they're close to a wall. If you're higher than them, then you can just drop down and punch them like you would with any other hero, or if they're higher than you, then you can uppercut to their elevation and then hit them. If Pharah uses her boost when you're fighting her, which is very common, then your only chance to keep fighting is usually to use the Meteor Strike, and if you do choose that route, then make sure you watch your cooldowns. You want to have that uppercut ready when you actually fight her, so don't be too quick to use that Meteor Strike. But anyway, the other option that you have is to just disengage and try again later, which is what you're going to be doing 9 times out of 10. Try not to fight the Pharah at all if you can get away with it. You'll generally get more done with the rest of the team against the rest of their team, but if she's giving you or others in your team a lot of trouble, then you can spend most of your time trying to bait her and fight her. If you play really well, you can actually turn the tides and shut down the Pharah. Sometimes I've had matches where I've shut down a Pharah several times in succession, and then they switch off to something like McCree or Sombra or some other hero that's fairly good against Doomfist. So it can be done, but if you're not one-tricking Doomfist, then honestly it's probably just better to pick McCree or something like that. If the Pharah uses her barrage, that makes her super easy to kill for Doomfist. You can just use the handgun, or if you have the opportunity, then you can tap her with a rocket punch to cancel it. And often if your team is in a dire situation, then just tapping rather than going for a frag is a better idea. And one other thing is that if Pharah is near the ground, you can actually hit her with the slam, because it goes up into the air a little bit so that you can't jump to dodge it, same way that the Earth Shadow works. Most Pharahs won't expect this, but it's not like Pharahs tend to spend much time around the ground anyway, so it's not really a common opportunity, I just thought I'd point it out. And the same actually goes for Meteor Strike. You can use it on stuff like lampposts or rooftops or whatever to hit her with it when she's not expecting it. Obviously you don't use this when the boost is up unless there's a roof directly above where you're doing it, like these chandeliers on Eichenwald.
Ridiculous Reaper.
Okay, Reaper, contrary to popular belief, is actually countered kinda well by Doomfist. He's not as easy to kill as Soldier or Hanzo or Zen, but he's actually fairly close. It's harder to secure a frag on him, but the chances of a Reaper actually outplaying and killing you are very, very low. So Reaper has no way of stopping an attack from Doomfist. All he can really do is escape it with the Wraith form. Now the Wraith form, despite the recent buff, is not really that much of a deterrent for you. It's super easy to just follow the Reaper and kill him when it ends to secure your frag. Even if your cooldowns haven't reset from your first attack, you probably still got some kit left to kill him with. Of course, if he does return to his team, then it'll be tough to kill him, but it's not like he's going to kill you and you've ruined his fantastic positioning, which is something that Reapers hold pretty dear. If you do get a chance to chase down that Reaper and secure the frag, that's great, but even if you can't, just scaring him away is a win for your team anyway, so you can be happy with that if it does happen. 250 HP isn't actually that much, and Reaper will die to most of your normal attacks that you would have done to any other squishy hero. So you might need another hand cannon shot if you're doing your, uppercutty, slammy kind of thing, but he'll just die normally, so don't fret about the extra HP. If Reaper uses Death Blossom, then you can just punch him out of it. If you think he's got Blossom ready, then avoid using your punch. Very simple. So it's pretty easy to keep Reaper ults shut down this way. The only problem will happen if he gets nanoed behind you and you die before you can tap him with the punch, or if he jumps off some ledge, blah blah blah, that sort of thing. So most of the time, Reaper Death Blossom is just not a problem for you. You can get rid of it.
Stupid Soldier.
Alright, most of the time, Soldier is pretty much just a free frag. In my few hundred hours of Doomfist, I've come across only a couple Soldier players that gave me any trouble at all, and all of them were high Grandmaster players. Soldier really has no way at all to escape or fight back against a Doomfist attack, especially a dive starting with slam, and he has to play really high and far away to stop himself from getting owned by you. If he does do that, then he's not really playing to his hero's strengths anymore because he's too far away, and so you can rest easy that you're pressuring him into not doing his job properly simply by existing. If Soldier is far away from you, he can actually kill you before you reach him, either with a direct helix rocket or lots of headshots or a damage boost. So obviously don't just dive Soldier every time you see him, just wait for him to not be pocketed and not be ages away from you, and he's generally a free kill. Keep your usual common sense when diving though, don't let yourself get owned by some other enemy's CC abilities who's standing next to him. Anyway, Doomfist countering Soldier is one of the hardest counters in the whole game, and you should expect him to swap to McCree after getting binned by you once or twice. So unfortunately, farming Soldier all day every day isn't something you get to do, but if he's there at the start of a match, then you can rest easy knowing that the first point is going to be an easy win.
Sombra.
Sombra is another really big counter to Doomfist, just like Pharah. I would put them as equally difficult characters for Doomfist to deal with. The main difference between the two is that Pharahs will generally focus you, and Sombras will usually have something better to do. Sombras like to attack backlines and tanks more than DPS, so generally you're going to be pressured by a Sombra less than you would be pressured by a Pharah, unless the player is just switching to Sombra to piss you off. Okay, so obviously hack pretty much completely debilitates you, so don't stray too far from your team when the enemy team has a Sombra, and keep an eye on the nearby health packs so you know what's available and what isn't. If you do get hacked, then I recommend just moving towards your team or around a corner if you have that option, and only engage Sombra with a hand cannon if it's a one-on-one and you don't have anything better to do. And also, if her HP was already low to begin with, then in that situation you can just fight her. EMP is of course a massive pain in the ass as well. For Doomfist it's completely unavoidable, so your best bet is to just expect it and play kind of far away from your team if it's coming. So if your team gets EMP'd but you don't, then you're one of the best possible assets at stopping the enemy team cleaning up yours immediately afterwards, provided there isn't a D.Va bomb or something else that's gonna own you anyway. Because Doomfist has got all this fantastic CC and he can ruin people's positioning and that kind of thing, so he's good at shutting down that kind of follow-up to EMP. So if Sombra just hacked someone and her hack is now on cooldown, or she's got enough pressure to not be able to hack at all, then you can just attack her freely and she'll either die or be forced to translocate. Most of the time that you see Sombra, this is the case, so if she isn't getting the jump on you, she's actually fairly easy to fight against. Similar to how you approach Reaper and Mei, if she translocates away from you after you attack, then that's a win for you even though she isn't dead. You can camp important health packs when you think she's coming if you want to pressure her like this. Also, if you do find the translocator, it's obviously a really easy frag when she uses it. Doomfist is pretty good at getting around the map and finding hidden and stuff, so you can be a useful asset against Sombra in this way. But do remember that the translocator lasts 20 seconds now, so you might be waiting a really long time for her, and she might not even use it.
Tricky Tracer.
So in my opinion, Tracer is kind of like Genji. She's strong against Doomfist, but not so strong that I'd really call her a counter. Tracer is absolutely hard to deal with as Doomfist, but Doomfist is also pretty hard to deal with as Tracer. Blink regenerates really fast, and most Tracers always seem to have a blink ready, so landing Doomfist abilities on her when she's aware of you is a pretty tall order. Tracer is very easily able to keep her distance away from you and escape your attacks. Luckily the same can be said for Doomfist, since he has vertical mobility and Tracer doesn't, so if she's pressuring you and you have the opportunity, you can just uppercut or bounce up to some high ground. Tracer's other weakness against Doomfist is the same weakness that she has against everyone else, which is her low HP. You don't need to charge Rocket Punch much for it to kill her with a splat, and you can even frag her with just a Rocket Punch and a shot from the hand cannon, and that hand cannon shot is going to land before she gets the chance to recoil, because the punch gives a bit of stun. If you know that her HP is a little bit down, then this is a really good idea because you're not banking on a good hand cannon shot for it to work. Most players think that Rocket Punch has to be charged for quite a bit to actually be useful, so Tracers will often not blink to escape a punch that was only charged a little bit. So in small rooms, this makes Tracer really easy to kill. Besides Rocket Punch, the usual slam and then shoot and then uppercut combo kind of thing is really good on her, and even just slam and uppercut is often enough to kill her. If you're using the air slam, which you should if the Tracer is aware of you, then you should try to aim it close to her so that you can get good damage out of the hand cannon. The other way that you can take advantage of her low HP is the hand cannon itself. Tracer can actually be two-shot with just the gun, provided that you land good hits on her, and your full clip or whatever you want to call it of the four of them can actually be used in close range to quite good effect against her. So if all of your cooldowns are off, if all of your abilities are on cooldown and Tracer comes to attack you, then you can just fight back with the hand cannon, and it works a lot of the time. So mostly because of this, I recommend that people practice leading with the gun a lot. It really pays off when fighting Tracers, and really it's the last thing that anyone expects to die to. Recoil is obviously a massive pain in the ass, but if you're experienced at fighting Tracers from other heroes, then you'll have predicting their recoil location as just part of your basic awareness. So Rocket Punch them as they recoil if you can, but do expect them to blink out of it, and don't commit to this sort of fight if you think it's going to get you killed if you miss. And one last thing, if the Tracer sticks you with the Pulse Bomb, then you can just use Meteor to survive it. It'll just fall onto the ground and you won't get hit. So that is a funny thing to do, and the Tracer will be annoyed. That's the end of the Tracer guide.
Defense heroes. Big Bastion.
Alright, Bastion is obviously pretty good against Doomfist, but there is actually a good amount of opportunity for you to fight back at him. Bastion being a Brigitte counter is going to be all over Season 10, so make sure you know how to deal with him before that goes live. Recon Bastion is pretty much just Soldier with more HP. Chances are if you attack him, you're going to be able to kill him. Just remember to charge your punch more than usual because he's got 300 HP, and don't be surprised if he just goes straight into Sentry just for the sake of 1v1ing you. With that in mind, make sure not to dive him from too far away, or he'll have plenty of time to get into Sentry and kill you, and it will be really difficult for you to secure the frag with that damage reduction that he has in Sentry, and also since you can't CC him, it's harder to get him into positions that you want him to be in. So Sentry Bastion, as you can imagine, melts Doomfist super fast because of how big Doomfist is. So the golden rule while fighting Sentry is to not let him get easy shots on you. The best way to approach a Bastion is to come in from the side or behind when he's distracted or already doing something else, like being on the payload fighting someone. So at close range, you can sink your kit to kill him, but if he's being pocketed, then you stand no chance. And once the Bastion is aware of you, you're going to have to kill him really quickly or he'll kill you first. Meteoring Sentry Bastion is okay, but the damage reduction will actually save him from the initial blast, so you need to put some kit into him as well after you've done the Meteor before he'll actually die. So a lot of Bastions will actually switch to Recon when they hear Meteor coming and then jump away from the center of the Meteor into Sentry to try and melt you as you come out of it. This will probably work, so be careful when using Meteor on Bastions in general. Again, it works better on ones that are not already paying attention to you. If the enemy team is playing that Protect the President strat where he's on the cart and they've got Orisa or Reinhardt shields all around him, then you should consider attacking the cart from a 125 spot in order to initiate an attack on the Bastion. So let your team know when you're attacking so that they can dive him too, because that burst damage that Doomfist gets out from his 125 damage slam is really helpful in initiating the dive. One last thing about Tank Bastion. Since Doomfist is super mobile and spends a lot of time in the air, Tank Bastion is actually not that much of a threat to you. I would say that he's easier to frag than Sentry Bastion. He's also not going to be expecting you to attack him aggressively and pump CC into him and that sort of thing, so he'll probably miss you a lot when you attack him, so just feel free to attack him and remove him from fights and stuff. Just make sure you don't stand still or go near any walls, and you should be fine fighting the Tank Bastion.
Hanzo.
So Hanzo, like Soldier, is extremely easy to kill as Doomfist and is most of the time just a free pick for you. Really, Hanzo's only hope of stopping an attack from you is either a clean headshot as you're coming towards him or a scatter against like some wall or something like that. So if you can reach Hanzo with a slam, chances are you can kill him, but as usual with as you would with any other hero, be aware of his mobility and be aware of his wall hack. I recommend asking your teammates to tell you if they see Sonic Arrow, especially if you're camping somewhere, so that you can know whether you're safe from his wall hack or not. Alright, a lot of the time Hanzos will try to climb walls to escape you, and I mean like ones that don't have a ledge above them, just flat walls that he's going to fall back off. So if that happens, just wait until he falls off to continue fighting. And the same goes for when you're attacking him with Meteor. Sometimes he'll just climb up a wall as he thinks you're about to hit it, so you just wait, and then once he comes back down again, you can hit him with that Meteor before he can climb it again. Of course, do be wary from headshots from above, but it's really not a big deal. And as you can imagine, Dragon Strike is pretty much harmless to Doomfist, so no need to worry about that.
Junkster.
Junkrat is commonly thought of as a Doomfist counter, but the matchup is actually pretty even. The main hassle that Junkrat presents to Doomfist is the trap, which he's gonna of course leave in places where he thinks that you want to slam him in order to engage. Most of the time he'll be right, so watch where you're slamming when Junkrat is on the enemy team. Places where the trap is hard to see, like the right side of the roof of Route 66 or any surface that you have to slam upwards to, should pretty much just be avoided unless you already know that the trap isn't there, and again you can communicate with your team to let them know where it is. Now be aware that the trap is actually larger than it appears, both horizontally and vertically, so it can be tricky to slam around it or over it as well. In 1v1s, Junkrats would usually place a trap between him and you, which is actually really tricky to get past as Doomfist. If the Junkrat can't trap you, then it's actually really difficult for him to fight back against you using just the pipes and the mine. However, you do need to be careful of the usual spam, and I recommend just avoiding any super ambitious engagements when Junkrat is on the enemy team. Most of the time, if you attack a Junkrat, he's going to try and use his mine jump to escape. It's easy for him to disengage like this, and it might throw off your movement as well if it hits you, but a disengagement from an enemy is usually a win for you. Junkrats will also try to mine jump away from the Meteor strike, but unless they're very prepared, they'll be too slow to do it. So as long as the mine isn't already on the ground, you can feel free to use Meteor strike on them. Meteor strike also counts as Riptire for obvious reasons, and it can be really funny to bait out a missed tire with it. It's quite tricky, the timing's difficult, but if you can get that, then it's big humiliation for the Junkrat, and of course shutting down a Riptire is fantastic.
Mama be May.
Playing against a Mei is a little bit like playing against a Reaper, but it's harder to secure frags on her. It's similar in that most of the time you're just making her waste her abilities and ruin her positioning in order to survive your attacks, but you probably won't frag her all that much unless you get a nice opportunity. So Meis will probably use Cryo to stop your combo or punch or whatever it is, and then put her wall between you when she comes out of it to stop you from chasing her. I recommend trying to learn the timing of Cryo so that you can punch her as soon as she comes out of it, or maybe even use some of the other abilities if that's what you have available. Her left click doesn't really freeze you fast enough to stop you from dealing 250 damage, but if she's being pocketed, then you might want to use a rocket punch instead of using slam and uppercut and hand cannon. And her right click isn't really too much of a threat because you move fast and you're not terrible. So I would say that most of the time, if the Cryo is on cooldown and you can reach Mei, then you can probably kill her the same as a Reaper with no Wraith. And as you can imagine, the Blizzard doesn't really pose any threat at all to Doomfist, so you can just go right through it or do whatever.
Torbjorn.
Torbjorn is pretty weak against Doomfist. The turret doesn't really do all that much damage, and it won't pose a threat to you unless it's in Molten Core or it's in a spot that's super inconvenient for Doomfist to attack, which is not many. If you can reach the turret, it's very easy to kill, and you can just tank the damage. And the Meteor Strike will also kill it, but most Torbjorns will pop Molten Core to save a level 2 turret if it's in a good spot. And most turrets are in good spots and are level 2, so expect this to happen a lot when you're facing off against a Torbjorn. I would say that using Meteor to force Molten Core is a good trade if you can survive, because Molten Core lasts for a very long time and does plenty of damage, but Meteor is just rubbish and you don't really need it. Just one thing that I forgot to put in the script that I thought was worth mentioning is that if you do dive the turret without the Molten Core, without the Meteor Strike in order to try and kill it, then it's very common for other players on their team, such as like Orisa and Zenyatta and that sort of thing, to attack you when you go after it. So do expect to get more damage than just the turret when you start attacking it, but besides that you should be fine. As for Torbjorn himself, he's really easy to kill. His hitbox comprises about 80% or maybe 90% of his model, so he dies to the hand cannon really easily. You can just think of him as like a Reaper with a little bit of long range poke and no Wraith form. Torbjorn is going to need really good positioning, lots of armor packs, or his ultimate to stop you from killing him, and sometimes he will actually pop Molten Core to stop you from killing his actual body, not the turret.
The Widowmaker.
Widowmaker is another hero that a lot of people think is strong against Doomfist, but really is not. Like Soldier and Hanzo, if you can slam to her, chances are you can kill her. Her thin hitbox does make it a bit difficult to land follow-up shots with the hand cannon, but the chances of her being able to hook away from you after you've engaged her and before you frag her are super low. Even in the high ranks, Widows are usually not quick enough to pull this off, and of course if you're far away from anywhere that can be hooked to, then it's going to be very difficult for them to find anything. The other lovely thing about the hook is that it makes a noise when you use it, so keep an ear out for that noise and attack Widows when it's down. The cooldown is fairly long, so even if she uses it to escape you, chances are you can chase her to kill it before it's back, but like I said, the chances for her getting away in the first place are fairly low. So Widowmaker spots tend to be pretty high up and far away, but with a bit of map knowledge and control over your movement, they're fairly easy for you to reach as Doomfist for the most part. There's a couple exceptions, but most of them are very easy. The main mechanical difference between attacking Widow and attacking something like Soldier is that you often find yourself spending Uppercut just to reach her in the first place, which leaves it on cooldown when you actually fight her. So in that situation you're going to have to use the hand cannon or the rocket punch, so I would recommend trying to punch her into a wall once you get up to her spot, or alternatively you can find a rocket punch bounce spot to get that extra height to reach her location, such as this one on Temple of Anubis. The only way that a Widow will kill you before you kill her is a charged headshot. Luckily Doomfist is really quick and it's easy to stay out of her line of sight, so you probably won't get killed by Widows very often. Of course, if the wall hack is up, then I would recommend disengaging unless you've got a strong dive or you can get the jump on her somehow. Just use your common sense.
Tank heroes. D.VA.
D.Va is pretty dangerous for a Doomfist player, but Doomfist is also pretty dangerous for a D.Va. The main rule of thumb that you probably already know from playing literally any hero against D.Va is to not put yourself in a position where you can't save yourself if she charges you with her stupid overpowered rocket ability. Be prepared to tap her with the rocket punch if you think she's gonna do that. If D.Va's boost is down, then she's really easy prey for booping. Most D.Vas won't expect this sort of thing to happen and will use their boost liberally even on maps like Ilios well. So use your air slam carefully to make sure you get into the right position to boop her, and be aware that you'll often have to use the rocket punch to push her far enough to go into holes or off maps a lot of the time. If you end up fighting the D.Va 1v1, she's probably going to use Defense Matrix to save herself if it's off cooldown, so that's going to save herself from the hand cannon but not the other abilities. Usually this will happen just after you uppercut her, so make sure not to shoot if she does start using it and just wait for it to end. She can't shoot you with the left click while Defense Matrix is up, so all she's doing is wasting time. You might not end up securing the frag on the mech because of this, but it's not that big of a deal. The other downside of it is that it robs you of your best opportunity to sink your fat hand cannon shots into her huge head hitbox. And remember that you can rocket punch her in that situation to stun her for a bit if you think it's a good idea for securing the frag. Now it's probably already ingrained into your muscle memory by now, but if not, make sure to learn the timing on the mech breaking so that you can punch baby D.Va as she comes out of it. Remember that she does bounce upwards a little bit as she comes out of it, so give yourself enough time for her to drop down before you blast her. And self-destruct isn't really an issue for obvious reasons, and you can actually punch the mech backwards to stop its forward momentum if you get the opportunity. Sometimes you'll also get the chance to chase down a baby D.Va while she waits for the mech to come back. Obviously this is a very easy frag, but be careful not to tunnel vision on her or you might feed. So overall, D.Va isn't too much of an issue for Doomfist to deal with, but she is an important hero to watch out for, and if the enemy team has one, then you should always keep in mind when you sync your kit or go into some room to hide or something like that, that she might be on the prowl for you. D.Vas will take every opportunity that they can get to chase you down and corner you, and if you don't have your abilities up to escape that, then you're going to be dying to D.Va a lot.
African horse robot.
And Orisa is yet another hero that everyone thinks counters Doomfist really hard, but in reality she doesn't. She is hard to kill with Doomfist, sure, but she's hard to kill with every hero, so that's not unusual. The main thing to keep your eye on when the enemy team has Orisa is the Fortify. If she's just used it, then you should have a look to see if you have an opening to go and attack her, because with just 400 HP and one of the fattest hitboxes in the game, she's actually a fairly easy kill to secure on your own. And also uppercutting her above the shield will give your team the opportunity to help you out if they have any long range poke damage like Soldier or a Widow. If Fortify is running, then you should just leave Orisa alone unless she's really close to dying, but if you do turn your back to her, try to keep a mental note of when her ult is up. Orisas will also use the Fortify to save themselves from your rocket punch if you open with it, but that can be fine if you're just trying to force out the Fortify in the first place. In that situation, as usual, be careful not to feed and keep track of her ult, because she can actually kill you with her gun if she lands a really good close ult on you. But don't take that as scaremongering over her gun, because in any other situation, it's almost certainly not going to kill you. So dealing with the ult is a bit annoying for the Doomfist. Obviously your mobility is one of your best assets and it sucks to lose it, but the good news is that the interaction between ult and Doomfist abilities has been fixed recently, and with a bit of discipline you can actually save yourself fairly easily. So the rule of thumb is that if you get ulted, wait for it to end before you use your movement abilities and you should be sweet. So for instance, if you're charging your rocket punch and you get sucked, just wait until the ult is completely over before you loosen your punch and it won't rob it from you. Getting ulted out of your slam really sucks, but at least it doesn't cancel it anymore, so you can get some damage somewhere, maybe if you're in like a team fight or something, and it's also really difficult for Orisa to pull that kind of ult off in the first place. And as for the supercharger, it's a nice little target for you can slam it and shoot it and leave, but remember that you die a lot faster when it's up, so don't get cocky when you're fighting it. Attacking the supercharger is very similar to attacking the Torb turret that I was talking about just before.
Ult charge sponge.
So when it comes to this concept that people are talking about lately of Reinhardt trying to be useful and getting completely owned by every CC and whoop in the game, Doomfist is the biggest part of the problem. Reinhardt just completely crumbles when the enemy team has a Doomfist because his positioning is his greatest asset, and if he doesn't have that, then he's not really helping the team and Doomfist just takes it away from him incredibly easily. So Reinhardt is the sort of hero that you can just freely bully without any worry. He doesn't have any defense against you besides his health pool. Obviously that health pool is high enough to stop you from just fragging him off the bat, so instead of trying to do that, you should instead try to shut him down. So the basic method of doing that I talked about earlier is rocket punching into him and then uppercutting and slam back to your team. But of course you can boop him back into your team or off ledges or whatever if you have that opportunity as well. If you get a full charge punch on him and it splats, then your team can probably get out enough follow-up damage to kill him before he gets healed again, especially if you have something like Winston that can get through the shield. And remember to shoot him once when he's stunned from your punch. On the off chance that you actually find yourself in a situation where you can sync kit on Reinhardt without dying, then do that, it's enough damage to kill him. Remember to place your slam behind the shield so that you can deal damage to him directly with it. As you probably know, rocket punching a charging Rein is going to stalemate both of you. This can either be a fantastic idea or a terrible idea depending on where you do it, just like the one with Doomfist. If you do it where you won't die, it's good, because you can tell your team to kill him while he's down. Teammates will need a bit of encouragement to actually shoot him when he's down, so make sure to yell, "I stalemated Rein!" really loud into the team chat. And if he does charge you and you don't have your punch, you can actually use your uppercut to ruin it, either from the side or from the front. Try to learn the timing on uppercutting a charging Rein from the front, because Reins prefer to charge when your punch is down. The charge will last forever if you uppercut it, and he won't be able to shield himself, so it's a fantastic opportunity for your team to kill him. And again, you're going to have to tell them to do that, because teammates need encouragement to, help you. If you get Earth Shattered, you're probably going to die, so make sure to play smart when it's up. Earth Shatter actually has a cast time where you can cancel it with a rocket punch and delay it with uppercut or slam, but the window of time where you have to cancel it is really short, so don't expect to be able to do this without a bit of luck. Meteor is pretty much useless against Reinhardt. He can just put his shield between the center of the blast and himself, so don't bother trying to hit him with it unless the shield is completely broken and on cooldown, or he's in a Junkrat trap or a Graviton or something like that.
Road pig.
Alrighty, Roadhog's huge health pool and his vape make it really difficult for a Doomfist to kill him, but thankfully his only weapon that will give you any trouble is the hook, which is very easy to avoid and has a long cooldown. Generally speaking, unless Roadhog is the last enemy alive, you should only try to ruin his positioning and don't bother trying to kill him. He doesn't have any mobility or protection from CC, so if you put him in your team, then he'll probably die. Roadhogs also like to stand next to holes and try to hook people into them, so you're going to get a lot of opportunity to book Roadhogs as well. Hole hog isn't really a problem. If you have your punch up, then you can really easily cancel it. And you might not believe it, but so long as he isn't nano boosted, you can even punch him from the front in order to cancel the whole hog. And that's really all I have to say about fighting Roadhog. It's a very simple matchup. You can 1v1 him in close rooms, you can 1v1 him in open areas if he's one of the last heroes alive and there's nothing better to fight. Like Reinhardt, he's an old charge sponge for you because he's never going to dodge your hand cannons and that kind of thing. I don't know what to say about Roadhog. It's a hero that's not great, not bad against Doomfist, but just play sensibly against him and you'll be fine.
Winston.
Winston is countered super hard by Doomfist, not quite as much as Brian, but Winston is really easy for you to shut down and kill. He can't kill you with his terrible damage. His shield isn't the problem because you can uppercut him out of it and walk through it and your punch ignores it anyway, and all he can really do about getting attacked by a Doomfist is just leap away. Like the D.Va, you can boop him if his leap is off, so do try to do that. And if you have the opportunity, then when you sync kill on him, that's a guaranteed kill on the Winston. And you can sometimes even secure the frag without the rocket punch if you have just a little bit of backup damage from your team, or maybe a discord on Winston or something like that. Orb is usually on Winston by default, so that makes your day a whole lot easier. Just like the other tanks, it's easy to ruin Winnie's positioning as well. Just with you pressuring him alone, he'll need a huge amount of support from his team to survive or get stuff done. Winston should be one of your highest priority targets, especially in the dive meta that we have at the moment. And one little thing about Primal Rage, since I feel like I should mention it, is that Winstons will often pop it to save themselves from you, so you can pressure him in situations where Primal is not a very good idea and maybe he'll use it to stay alive and not get a whole lot of value out of it.
Powerful SJW.
Zarya, just like Orisa, only has 400 HP, which is actually not that much for Doomfist to deal with. You can kill Zarya without the rocket punch pretty easily if her personal bubble is off. She does enough damage to fight and kill you if she's at high charge though, so do be wary of that. You can use the rocket punch earlier to stun her if you think you're going to die to the beam. And like the Roadhog, Zarya is a really easy boop target, so try to put her in holes or out of position when you can. In terms of actually fighting Zarya 1v1, that's pretty much all I have to say. She's only going to pose a threat to you if she's at very high charge and doesn't have anything else to deal with. So I would say, although Zarya herself is pretty weak against Doomfist, she is a good pick against him because of the bubbles, of course. So make sure you keep an eye on both of her bubbles and try your best not to feed her charge, unless she's already at full and it doesn't matter. You can bait bubbles just by pretending to engage her or on an opponent that she wants to save. There's a few ways of doing this. You can cancel your rocket punch just at the end of it. You can punch next to her. You can slam next to her and then return to the team, and sometimes even just walking up to a Zarya will make her bubble and panic if she's a bad one.
Support heroes. Egyptian grandma.
Ana is a little bit trickier to pin down than most supports, but she's not terribly difficult to kill. She's one of the few targets that you can just Meteor and expect her to actually die, so that's a good start. The main thing to watch out for when fighting Ana is obviously the sleep dart. If it's on cooldown, then she's really easy to kill with a quick dive. If it's off cooldown and she has it ready, then she'll just wait until you uppercut her and then own you with it. Diving from very far away is also a little risky because she can hit the darts easily, and her rifle can actually cut through a huge amount of your HP before you reach her. And she doesn't need to hit headshots, so it's pretty much equally as dangerous as diving a Widow from far away, or maybe even more so depending on the rank that you're playing at. Biotic Grenade is the other thing that kind of sucks to deal with because she can give herself a lot of HP that makes her actually pretty difficult to frag due to her tiny hitbox. Like Zarya, it's not too hard to do 400 damage to her, but Ana, it's pretty hard to deal 200 plus whatever she has with the grenade, I can't remember. You can still blast her, but you're gonna need a couple more shots from the hand cannon, and it'll take more time than you might have expected. And for the record, this is a bit weird, but apparently Biotic Grenade doesn't actually stop Doomfist from building shields. I haven't tested that myself, but that's what I read online. It's probably true. Alright, and I always finish these up by talking about the ultimates, but of course Nano Boost is a little bit of a difficult one to talk about because it's different for every hero that it gets on. It gives you a little bit of opportunity to shine in general. Doomfist is really good at disrupting nano boosted tanks. Like I was saying before, you can boop all the tanks and own them, blah 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 blah, ruin the position, blah blah blah. You pretty much just play the same way that you'd be playing against a normal tank anyway. Just try not to commit to any frags and don't get too cocky because of course the damage is way higher and you should be alright.
Big Eater.
So Brigitte isn't in competitive play yet, and I haven't had much experience fighting her in quick play, so most of what I'm saying here in this part of the guide is based on experience in free-for-all. Not a lot of experience, so do take all of this with a grain of salt. I'm really not good and well versed at fighting Brigitte yet, so this is all going to be kind of sort of up in the air advice. But anyway, Brigitte is a pretty tough opponent for Doomfist to fight, and it's not only difficult to secure frags on her, but her armor pack is also going to prevent you from getting frags on other squishies on the enemy team that you would have got otherwise. My best advice against Brigitte is to not engage her early in the fight. Like Roadhog, she's better dealt with later on unless she's separated from her team, which she almost certainly won't be. When you do fight a Brigitte, try to engage her when she's distracted or has just used her stun and whip combo on one of your teammates. Even better, engage her when her shields get broken. Brigitte's shield doesn't tend to break very much, at least not in the uncoordinated world of quick play, so I wouldn't expect that to be a very common opportunity. However, if it does go down, that also disables her stun move entirely, which leaves her with only the whip shot to stop you from killing her. Now the whip shot is quite a good tool against Doomfist. It will interrupt your attacks and it will interrupt them well, so consider both the whip shot and the shield bash to be CC moves not to dive into, the same way you treat McCree's flashbang. Regarding your abilities and their use against Brigitte, remember that the slam will not damage her through the shield, but the uppercut and rocket punch will. Rocket punch, I reckon, is the move that works best against Brigitte because it's hard for her to stop you from hitting her with it. If you have to slam her, remember what you know from fighting Reinhardt and slam behind the shield so you can actually get the damage in. Brigitte has a lot of effective HP, so you should make sure to get all of the damage in that you can in this regard. I would also say you should avoid using the hand cannon early into the engagement because its damage will be halved if you shoot it into her armor. I really don't have anything to say about Rally at this point from experience. It makes her a very daunting opponent to 1v1 and will work like a one-time shield generator for all of her teammates. Just thinking about it on paper, having had almost no experience actually playing against Rally in quick play, I would say that it would be best to whittle the armor off of her teammates that got that lasting armor from the ult and disengaging after getting rid of it rather than trying to secure frags through their huge health pools. Now this is something that Doomfist is not particularly good at, and it much better suits a hero like Soldier that has good long range poke. And as for the Meteor Strike, just like Reinhardt, Brigitte is able to save herself from it with her shield, so don't bother Meteor Striking her unless her shield is completely broken or she can't move due to stun or Junkrat trap or whatever. So that's what I have to say about Brigitte. Again, don't take it all too seriously at this point, but I felt like I should put this in the guide since I've played against Brigitte a little bit and just to, cover all the ground.
Lucio.
Lucio is one of the easiest heroes to kill, so he should be a high priority target if you're playing dive. Your CC is better than his, and Lucio's tend to move in straight lines, so just slam and uppercut him, or you can just punch him when he's running around near or on walls. Lucio will try to boop you if you get close, and if he times it really well, it can actually stop your slam from hitting him. It'll still land, but it won't hit him, but otherwise it's not going to do much. Doomfist has really good recovery from CC, so if he does try to boop you into a hole, it's probably going to be a boop wasted. Of course, if your cooldowns are all on, then be careful around holes, don't get booped in. Since he can't really boop you very much, Lucio's only real method of dealing with you is fighting back and losing, or running away and probably losing. That being said, sound barrier is pretty annoying to deal with for obvious reasons. It will ruin your meteor strike if you're popping it, and it will also force you to disengage in most other situations. You can cancel the sound barrier with the rocket punch if you get the opportunity, but the cast time is quite short if Lucio is already on the ground.
Mobile Mercy.
Mercy is mobile, which makes her a pain in the ass to pin down. Even if you do slam and uppercut her, she's really thin and hard to deal damage to with the hand cannon, and she will fly away as soon as she gets an opportunity, which is very often because she can not only fly to teammates, but also corpses. When Valkyrie is up, killing her is pretty much out of the question. But all of this said, you can still kill her the same way that you kill the other squishy healers. You just need to deal damage a bit faster than you can get away with when fighting the others, or you're going to need to have a teammate to help you out. So Doomfist, more than anyone else on the team, should be listening for the Mercy low callouts. Of course, if you can get her into a room or kill her with the rocket punch, then it's problem solved and you can just frag her alone. Similarly, meteoring Mercy is pretty tricky, but sometimes she'll actually be the best option you have to attack with it. And so what you want to do in this situation is stay a step ahead of her in the mind game. So normally Mercies will try to avoid your meteor by standing far away from their teammates and then flying to the teammates when you target on top of them. So if you target too far in front to compensate, then they just won't fly at all until the meteor is already done. So there's kind of a sweet spot that you can find that will bait them into flying forward, but still hit them after the delay. Of course, this is never a guaranteed frag unless there's nobody for the Mercy to fly to, but it is worth a shot if you have no better option and you don't want to disengage. Okay, one other thing about the Valkyrie, and this is a little bit weird. If she has Valkyrie up, like she's using it, she can actually fly up to a spot where you can't attack her and rain pistol shots on you. This is actually kind of dangerous, and in this case what you should do is either move away or kind of dance around for a bit until it's over. This is a terrible use of Valkyrie, which unlike Meteor Strike is actually a really good ult, so you can feel kind of good about this happening. Maybe it's like a good idea if you're like the last one alive and you're just trying to build some ult charge or something like that, but whatever. So this will usually happen if you're camping on some high ground and their team doesn't have much mobility. But as I said, just walk away from it and just disengage. Don't bother trying to fight back against Valkyrie Mercy.
Mirror.
I reckon you should take Moira to be a lot like Mercy. She's thin and hard to pin down and generally a low priority target amongst the healers unless she's in Coalescence. Fade is a lot like Guardian Angel in that it saves her from getting owned by you and has a short cooldown. It's usually pretty difficult to re-engage Moira after she fades, so be ready to just retreat if you think the fight isn't going well. In general, it's better to just wait until she uses it for whatever other reason and then dive her and secure the frag. And as I said, like Mercy, she's pretty thin, so once you've dived, it is difficult to secure good damage on her, and she's also a lot better at healing herself than Mercy, which makes it more difficult again. That all said, it's not terribly difficult to get Moira frags in general, just a lot more difficult than healers like Lucio and Zen. I would say be careful in chasing her in extended 1v1s because her damage output is actually pretty good with the purple ball, and it can kill you if you're too slow to get to killing her. And now, having said all that, Coalescence is a completely different story. It's rarely ever a problem for you. Most of the time it's actually a good opportunity because Moira can't fade when she's in it. She moves faster, so she's harder to hit with the slam or the punch, and she regens her health fairly fast, which makes it harder than usual to secure the frag if you're doing the slam and then uppercut. But so long as you have the space to reach her and deal enough damage, it's actually a fairly easy frag and ult shutdown. If you can't get the frag, then you can also just tap her with the rocket punch instead, which will cancel the ult, like how Sound Barrier or Roadhog gets cancelled. And so Coalescence is a surprisingly easy ult to shut down and fight against, and if you pop it, I recommend immediately having a look to see if you have any opportunity to get to that Moira and shut her down.
Symmetrical.
So the only major problem a Symmetra will ever give you is the shield generator, but you can easily break it with your Meteor Strike, so I recommend saving your ult for the buildings when the enemy team has Symmetra. Shield gen is a problem because it'll give all the other enemies on the team enough HP that they become difficult for you to kill, so it should be a priority for you to get rid of. Turrets can be a little bit of a nuisance as well. You can just get rid of them one by one or have a teammate help you out or use abilities to get past them. But, you know, sometimes you get caught, especially if you're in a dire situation, meteoring a building to try and get rid of it, and there's turrets all around that you can't kill, and you get the idea. Anyway, if you can attack the sim directly, then it's an easy kill. She won't be able to kill you unless her beam is at max damage, and even then, you'd probably be able to kill her faster. Honestly, that's never happened to me, so I can't say from personal experience. If Symmetra's buildings just died and you have your Meteor ready, then you can use it on her because she has no way to escape it. And you will probably get your Meteor strike back before she gets the building back, so I think this is a good idea. And I'm afraid that's all I have to say about Symmetra. It's a very simple matchup. Doomfist is a fantastic pick against Symmetra. Really, anything is a fantastic pick against Symmetra these days, but Doomfist in particular. So, that's that.
Zany Zenyatta.
Zenyatta is right up there with Soldier and Hanzo as the easiest characters for Doomfist to kill. If the enemy team has Zenyatta, he's almost always a high priority target for you. He has a low HP, forgiving hitbox, lack of mobility, and poor damage output make him a total pushover against you. All that he really has to save himself is Transcendence, teammates, and a well-placed 5-ball, but 5-ball just got nerfed and is much less of a problem than it has been up until now. Obviously watch out for it if he has the wall hack on you, either from Discord Orb or a sniper teammate. I would say try to imagine yourself from Zenyatta's perspective having that wall hack on you, and make sure you don't just walk straight back around the corner as soon as it ends, because that's when he's probably going to be letting his 5-ball go. Instead, you should try to find some way to juke him or just find a different corner to go around. Okay, so when you're attacking Zen, if he does pop the Transcendence to save himself, that is fantastic because it's an extremely powerful ult. You can force him to pop either with a traditional dive attack or with your Meteor, and trading Meteor for Trans is one of the best ult trades that you can make. It's often better for the Zen to pop it and save himself than die and have to come all the way back to the team anyway, especially since he's slow. So Doomfist absolutely counts as a real counterpick to Zen as far as ults go, unlike Genji for instance, who's also very good at getting picks on Zen but would rather not trade an ult as important as Dragon Blade for Trans, if you see what I mean. Of course, you can also just Meteor the Zen to pick him as well, and if you're not sure whether Trans is up or not, you can just nuke him and find out. And if you want to get the best value that you can against a Zen in a team fight who has Trans ready and you have Meteor ready, one thing that you can do, that you probably won't get the opportunity to do very much, but it is possible, is you attack him until he pops his Transcendence, and then you pop your Meteor and use it for something else. Or, shortly after he pops his Transcendence, you can pop that Meteor and use it on him as he comes out of it. And one last little thing that I feel like I should mention, this goes for every hero, but of course the Discord Orb can be a bit of a hassle to deal with since you spend a lot of time in the open. But since Doomfist has arguably the best mobility in the game, you can just get out of line of sight for a bit if you really need to. And as I said before, do watch out for a 5-ball on your way back around that corner.
How to use Meteor Strike.
Alright, let's talk about Meteor Strike. This is the worst ult in the game. It is a damage-oriented ult that is rarely able to actually deal useful damage or get picks. It leaves you extremely vulnerable after use. It can be easily jeopardized by your teammates in situations where you're likely to use it. It's very buggy and difficult to control, and it moves fairly slowly across a not terribly good duration of 4 seconds. On the plus side, it's very versatile, you can use it for a lot of different things, and it builds extremely fast. So I want to give you guys some advice on when to use Meteor and when not to, and what to look out for when you do use it. And I want to preface all of this by saying that if you don't get any use from Meteor, it's not really the end of the world because it's a low value ult and you're probably going to get one again soon. If it's not obvious to you already, Meteor isn't just useful for damage but also for mobility and disengaging. So Meteor moves actually faster than Doomfist does normally, so you can use it to return to a fight in dire situations, but do remember that you don't contest a point until the ult is completely over and you're back in first person. You can be shot at, however, from the point that Doomfist hits the ground, so don't use Meteor to contest unless you think it's safe. You can, however, use it to get to high places, or leave the fight without dying, or return to your healers and health packs before re-engaging. Bearing in mind that there's a window of vulnerability that you have between the point where the ult hits and where you're able to control Doomfist again, you have to be extremely careful where you use it if you're using it on any opponents or near any opponents. Basically, if you're not intending to trade and sure that you can guarantee a frag, you should not use it near anything that can kill you after it lands. If you're not sure that you can guarantee a frag, you're quite likely to die even using it on one opponent. It's incredibly hard to aim the Meteor even on enemies with no mobility like Zenyatta that appear to be free picks. Even after 350 hours on Doomfist, I still miss Meteors on lone full HP Zenyatas that kill me with their right click as soon as I land. Obviously, if you're not expecting to die, then you should never ever use it to anything that can CC or frag you when you land. So this includes any McCree, Ana, Reinhardt, Doomfist, Widowmaker, Hanzo, Zenyatta, and the list goes on. Similarly, don't use it if you have a low HP, even if you think you'll get a lot of shields from the ult itself. You will get melted as soon as you land, and you will die. It should also go without saying that you should avoid meteoring anything that can escape the blast itself, which is almost every hero, assuming their escape abilities are ready. So the safest bets are Zen, Hanzo, Widowmaker, Junkrat, Ana, Symmetra, and Torb. Now, while the Widowmaker, Junkrat, and Hanzo technically can escape this meteor, chances are they're not going to unless you're at a very, very high rank. So unless these heroes are not getting saved by a teammate or some cover, then you can get some pretty easy picks on these heroes. And some other obvious targets that you can usually go for are Torbjorn's turret, which will either kill it or force out the molten core, Bastion when he's in sentry mode, Symmetra's buildings, and Orisa's supercharger. Okay, on a more general level, my main point of advice that I have when using Meteor is that you should look at and consider everything that's in the vicinity. Look at all your teammates and what they're doing, and look at all the enemies and what they're doing, and choose a target that will actually be worth attacking. You see, when you're in Meteor, you have fantastic visibility of what's going on. You're not worried about like tunnel visioning stuff because you're not actually fighting. You can just swing the camera around and see everything that's going on. You're in third person, so you can look around corners and shit. So just get an idea of what's going on and find something that is worth attacking. Very often I find myself ulting a Torb turret that a soldier kills just before my meteor lands, or I ult as Zenyatta that the Winston whoops away with promo rage, or I ult next to an enemy Reinhardt by mistake and I get charged immediately, something like that. I know that since Meteor Strike is only 4 seconds long, you kind of feel a bit panicky and you gotta find something quick to use it on if you haven't already decided. And so that's why that I say that you should try to calm down a little bit and check out what's going on and make sure you don't make any mistakes with your Meteor, because it is easy to feed with this terrible ability. One other thing you should do using Meteor is ask your teammates to push in as soon as you pop it, because when Meteor is running, the enemies are going to be panicking a little bit and leaving positions that they like for the most part. So they'll scatter a little bit if they can, and they'll get ready to use their CC abilities on you. So this is a fantastic opportunity for your team to get in while they're a little bit disorientated and trying to work out how they're going to deal with you. As for the actual mechanics of using the Meteor Strike, I want you to think of it this way if you don't already. Imagine that at the very center of the targeting reticle on the ground, there's a little dot, a little point in 3D space. So this dot is what you're controlling when you're using Meteor. And this dot can climb and descend walls instantly. So when you use the right click to zoom out, this dot immediately shoots all the way up to the ceiling. If you're under a bridge and zoom out, for instance, this dot isn't going to go onto the top of the bridge, it's going to hit the ceiling of it and be on the underside. And so this is both a good thing and a bad thing, because this dot can get caught on stuff like overhangs and bad map geometry, mistakes that the developers have made, and these sort of things are everywhere, so you've got to be very careful how you move around when ulting. One thing that's happened to me a few times that is very, very frustrating and kind of embarrassing is that I wasted Meteor Strike because I just got stuck on map geometry trying to put it where I wanted it to go. Okay, and that's all that I have to say about Meteor Strike. I hope that all of that was easy enough to understand and that the clips that I showed on the screen made sense. There's a lot to this ult, a whole lot to think about, and in the 4 seconds that you get to think about what you're going to do, it can be very hard to actually get any use out of it. So use this ult liberally, use it a lot, get good practice in, and just, build your familiarity with how to use it and how not to use it.
Movement tips. Okay, let's jump in game.
Hello everyone, this part of the video is unscripted and recorded completely separately to the rest of it, so hopefully this isn't too jarring of a change for you, but I want it to be in game while I talk about the movement stuff. I feel like people have a lot of bad habits when it comes to Doomfist movement and don't understand things terribly well, so there's a bunch of things that I want to clear up. First thing I want to talk about is the rocket jump, as I call it, when you jump out of a rocket punch. So like every Doomfist guide and its dog says, hey, if you want to get more distance out of your rocket punch when you're using it for movement, you should jump at the end of it. Yeah, obviously, but none of them say that you should jump first and then loose it, which gets you a little bit further. And I don't know why anyone wouldn't say this, because it seems such an obvious thing to do it when you're at the apex of your jump, because you know you end up spending more time in the air with the increased speed before you go on the ground and become slow again. So I think it's really ridiculous that people don't do that and teach people not to do that. So if you're using it to move around, absolutely do your jump first and then jump again as you come out of it. Okay, with that cleared up, I want to talk about the Seismic Slam. You probably already know there's two different ones. People have different names for them. I call them the Ground Slam and the Air Slam. The Ground Slam is when you like this one, and the Air Slam is like this one. So Air Slam is when you have the targeting reticle, and this targeting reticle will appear so long as you are a certain distance above the surface beneath you. So if I come over here, let's get rid of some of these fences. If I come like this, you can see I am jumping off the side of this ledge, and I'm getting that reticle. But if I'm down here and I jump, just jumping flat on a surface is not going to get you high enough to get that reticle. And likewise, when I jump down these stairs, I'm never at a point high enough that I'm actually able to get it. But if I come like this, you can see I get it briefly. So it's just a distance that you kind of have to feel and learn for yourself. Most of the time you'll like learn by spot whether it's possible or not. Like here on Hanamura, it's possible. And so the differences between them, you probably already know, is that the Ground Slam has a higher max damage. It can reach all the way up to 125 if you get a good one. This is probably 125 here, you know, close to it, but not quite. And then if I were to do the same one as an Air Slam, you can see it's much lower damage, but it lets you aim it, and it can go much further horizontally, which is the main advantage of it. So let's imagine that I want to fight an Ana player who is over there. For sake of argument, let's say the sleep is down, then it's a good idea to attack this Ana. So this wall is in the way, and I'm just like waiting for my slam to come back down, because I've used it to get here maybe, and then it's time to attack the Ana, whoop, and I can go like this. Of course with the Ground Slam, I can't do it. If I come around like this, it's really slow, and so on and so forth. There are other ways to get to the Ana. I can do something like that with the turn punch and so on and so forth, but the point is that this Air Slam has fantastic horizontal mobility, and it's useful for getting around in a lot of different places that you might not have thought of. So like if I'm here, I can attack people that are all the way out there by just jumping a little bit to the side off of this ledge and then attacking them. And there's a whole bunch of places where you can do this. Like over there, you might think the only way to attack someone coming out of this doorway here is to use the rocket punch to get to them, but you can just go like that and make it all the way over to them. It's very quick, it's very useful, and there's all kinds of places that you might not think to use it. And I'll show you a really good example on what's it called? Gibraltar. So I'll just head over to Gibraltar really quick. Okay, here we go. This is my favorite little jumping off the edge. So you see this here, I can reach all the way into the inside of this plane where people like to hide and, you know, hide. And so you might not think to use it, you might think, oh, I gotta come all the way over here, but look, there's this right here. You can just jump above that, come all the way inside and kill whatever stupid hero is standing inside here. So that is fantastic. Okay, back on Hanamura, I want to talk about using the rocket punch to get, and the Seismic Slam actually, to get height where you would otherwise want to use your uppercut. So here there is this little ledge here, there's this gap. I cannot jump all the way over here. Many newbie Doomfist players would use the uppercut to make this. Uppercut has a 7-second cooldown, Seismic Slam has a 7-second cooldown, rocket punch has a 4-second cooldown. If you're using stuff for movement and you want to be ready at any time to do some fighting, then you want to prioritize your rocket punch as your go-to movement ability. So if I want to get up there, I can use the rocket punch to get up. So just as I was doing before with the rocket punch, jump first, and then release at the height of your jump, and then jump again. And you can get enough height to make it up there. Then you can make enough height to get all the way up to here, and you can make enough height to get up all the way up to here. Actually, you can just jump this one, but you get the point. And then you can actually just jump on this one, worth pointing out that. And then, for instance, you know, this, you can do that in all kinds of ones. Hanamura's got a whole bunch of them. I'll head over to the second point again so you can see some over there. So from here you might think that you want to use the uppercut to get over there. You can just do it with the rocket punch, really nice and easy, and then you can do more rocket punches to get over here. Of course you can't do it that fast, but at least you're saving some time. The other thing you can do if you don't have your rocket punch or your uppercut available, or for whatever reason you want to use your Seismic Slam, you can Seismic Slam upwards. So Seismic Slam actually reaches slightly higher than the height that you are when you use it providing you do an air one. If you do a ground one, obviously it goes up a little bit, and there's a couple minor situations where you can use that. I'll demonstrate one on... well, I'll demonstrate a couple actually, never mind. I'll talk about that later, but for now, I just want to point out that you can do seismic slams upwards, and of course you can engage with this. So if there's enemies up here, it's like, let's say there's a soldier who's just pouring out this way, you can just come up like this, and then go up and down onto the point. Or, well, if it's a soldier, you'd want to kill him. If it's a Roadhog or something like that, you can go up and down to the point. You get what I'm trying to say. And then you can do stuff like this. And let me find one more example. Let me go. You can do this. So there you go. You can do a whole bunch of things like that. And make sure you have that in mind when you're using your slams and rocket punches to get around. Don't rely on the uppercut to get you height. Obviously it gets you the most height, and sometimes you have to use it, but if you can avoid using it, then it's a good idea, because it's a wonderful ability to be fighting with instead of moving around with. Alright, so here is a kind of tricky way that you can use this seismic slam using the ground slam to do some movement stuff. This is actually the only one I can think of right now, so I won't bother showing anymore. But you can use it to get over here. And you don't actually need that fence to be there for you to do this, but it does make it easier. So you can do it from here, just from like the very back of where the fence is, and you can use that to get through that hole. So the ground slam is occasionally useful for movement, but it is absolutely a niche thing. Most of the time it can be air slams, and just for the hell of it, here's an upwards one that you will want to use a lot to attack, you know, Pharahs who like to stand here and that kind of thing. So there's another example for you, and I'm out of this map now. Okay, back on the lunar colony. I'm going to talk a little bit about the turning rocket jump. This is something that a lot of people like because it looks cool and it feels cool. So basically, when you're doing your punch, you just turn, and then when you do your jump at the end of it, you will start jumping in that direction. So it might look a little bit odd, but this is something that's really easy to just practice in game. You just turn while you're punching. You can't turn that far. You see the view kind of locks as you turn, and that is so you can only jump at a certain angle. So you can do it to the left or to the right, and you can come around about 45 degrees away from your original punch trajectory. And so that will let you do stuff like, I don't know, come around corners. You can do it from the ground as well. Sorry, these are really bad ones. There's a bunch of, you know, funky little rollouts and cute little things that you can do with these that people aren't going to expect. You can use it just for juking snipers or whatever. It's very universally applicable, and you're going to find all kinds of ways to make this work for you. Can't really think of any of them right now for Horizon. I guess something like that. You can just come this far back from all the way over there. So stuff like that. It's a very simple technique, very easy to get the hang of. People consider it an advanced technique, but it's actually very basic. So learn that early on, and you'll be much better with your Doomfist movement. Okay, using these slopes, I like to call this surfing, because it kind of reminds me a little bit of surfing from Counter-Strike. That is basically just when you come up on these things, and you should be aware that these slopes, you can kind of spend time on them in a way. Uppercutting into them won't stop you, and you can use them to kill some time while you wait for cooldowns to come back, or the occasional rollout, or getting close to Pharahs who are standing really high up on them, or even, you know, Junkrats or whoever else can get up there. And so, for example, you can come up here and then do an air slam to here, because it counts as an air slam when you're on this, I suppose. It's kind of inconsistent, because if you do it like this, it counts as a ground slam. This is just kind of thing that you want to learn for yourself, I suppose. Maybe it's because I'm facing one way and not the other way, but it really doesn't make any sense. It's just something that, yeah, you learn as you go. It's like, even this kind of thing, you can use that. And if you're seismic slamming on them, then so long as it lets you, you get to do really long 125s. So this is actually kind of useful. For instance, if there's some guy hiding here, you can get a 125 on him that he's really not going to expect, because the seismic slam sound was so long ago. So there's all kinds of wonderful applications for that. And I'll find some other example of this to show you on some other map, so you know it's not just a Horizon Lunar Colony thing. So I'll head to another map and show you. Okay, another goofy movement technique that's really not that useful, but you can use it occasionally, which is uppercutting into a roof in order to send yourself horizontally. Now this will work on pretty much anything that's like above you a little bit. if you have like an edge to be under, then that edge will usually get you to move along. Can't make it work on this one right now for whatever reason, but it usually will work. And you can do this on any diagonal roof. These are the easiest ones to do it on. And these are nice mostly for juking people that you don't want to hit you. There's the occasional situation where you can use it for like a nice rollout or something like that. And also for just getting out of spawn faster. So if you're getting out of Hana and Moira spawn, oh, I can't do it on this one. Oh yes I can. If you're coming out here, you can like bump your head on this, and if you do it right, then you'll kind of move forward a little bit, which is slightly better than not doing it. There you go, that's a good one. And I'll let you slam all the way to here. So if you're coming out of that spawn, it's slightly faster to do that. If you want to get back to the point to contest very quickly, so I recommend you do this. Hello again, this is recorded on a different day. Some of my clips had bad audio, so I'm doing a little bit of re-recording. I'm going to try and keep this brief at this point, because I know the video is getting way too long, because I'm like a long way into editing now and actually know it's long. Anyway, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about everyone's favorite piece of shit technique, where you do a rocket punch and you jump into an object and it bounces you up. That's a really bad one. I'll get a clip of me going the whole way up to there in a second. There you go, so you can see you can come up like that. This works on pretty much any edge, so like it'll work on this thing here. You can bounce up like that, come up to this thing. If I push W, I would have gone in. Even weird little stuff like this, you can come up on that, which gets you enough height to come up here. You know, there's all kinds of things. Usually these are used for getting to particular weird spots rather than actually like anything useful in a fight. So some spots you do need this to get to them. Usually it'll be something obviously quite high up, or maybe it's just a faster route to get to something that you can get to otherwise if you use uppercut and that kind of thing. So it kind of ties into what I was talking about before, about saving your uppercut by using the seismic slam and punch, which is absolutely what you do when you do this. I'm not going to go into any particular spots or anything, and I don't want to encourage people to get too obsessed with this technique, because it is not like useful in the fights most of the time. There's like a very occasional flashy frag that you can get with it, but for the most part this is just something that you do outside of the fight when you're just trying to get up to some hard spot. So you can find guides showing you ways to get to certain spots in particular, and you can use that to kind of see where you can and can't use this technique, but this guide is not for that. So that's the end of me talking about this. This is another one for like fuck-aroundy, feedy kind of spots, and I'm just going to show you this example here on King's Row. So this is a spot here next to this pipe on this roof, and you kind of slide around left and right on this part. You can control your sliding here, by the way. This is one of those roofs where you can actually stay on it if you move around yourself, and you can come into this little slot here where you fall down into it and you get stuck. So if I'm stuck here, after 4 seconds I will bounce upwards like that. Now that is not a thing that I did of my own accord. That is just something that the game does to put you back where you're supposed to be. So here, even if I stop at this part here, so long as I'm completely still on our roof for 4 seconds, I'll bounce up like this. And so I can come back down like that again. And so normally this is just a side effect of being in one of these spots, but occasionally it'll actually give you an opportunity to make something useful out of it. And I will show you an example of how you can make something useful out of it. Okay, welcome to Blizzard World, really good map. Let's go over to this spot that I was talking about. So you can get to it from here. I don't need to be doing this because I have infinite uppercuts, but you do because you're playing the game. Let's imagine you're on first point defense on Blizzard World and there is an enemy Pharah. Let's go over to this other spot up here. So this here is a roof that's actually completely flat, and I can just slide back and forth on it myself. It's thinner than it looks, so you do have to be careful when you're on this, but I can just stop completely here. And I can wait, and I'll get the bounce every 4 seconds, and it will put me right back down onto this flat surface, and I can stay here indefinitely. It's not a real piece of ground, it's coded as a quote-unquote roof, the same way that that bit of blue stuff is coded as a roof, and you can just stay here indefinitely, and this is actually the highest bit of ground on this point. And so you can wait until you get this bounce, and then you can have a little bit of extra height to fight against the Pharah. And when I say that that is the extent of usefulness of that technique, I'm pretty much telling the truth. It's not that far from it. This is an incredibly niche technique. You don't really need it. If you're already in the spot, that's probably good enough. So you can just stay here and then you can fight Pharah like this or whatever, and you're gonna do just fine. So don't stress about the bounce. Don't try to get good at that. Wait until you've got, you know, 400, 500 hours on Doomfist and then start to think about it. Because you don't need to know that kind of stupid shit. That is good enough for you. Okay, one more thing with the goofy roofs, this time on the Roadhog. I'm going to show you a spot up here that you can get to in the normal way by doing one of the rocket bouncy jumpy thingies off there and then uppercutting into the spot. So, you will notice that I actually have my targeting reticle here, as if I was in the air. And I can target down there, I can target over here. And this is weird because I can just slam directly down to it like that and I kind of go past the roof. Obviously this is completely unintentional, but it does exist and I think it's worth pointing out. Now, if I come far enough forwards on this bit of roof, you can see that that disappears. And now I have the spot where I can stop or slide around and I can get my little bounce out of this. So I can wait and then do my funky fear attack or whatever. But the point is that there are some spots on roofs, and this is one of two that I know of. There might be one that I'm forgetting, but I'm pretty sure I only know two, where you actually get that air slam from a roof. And I'm not counting the slopey one from that point on Horizon that I was looking at before. So this little spot here is a good way to show that there's like a discrepancy between roofs that you can slam directly off and roofs that you can't slam directly off. And for both cases, you can stay on them indefinitely and get the bounce. So I just want to point out that that does exist. Like I said, it's not a spots video, so I'm not going to go over all of those, but that is one of them that you can use. Alright, I believe that's the end of my movement section. So, thanks for watching the unscripted part, and see you in the script.
Whoops.
Booping is so good, so good. Now, you might not consider Doomfist to be the most boopiest character in this game. You probably think it's Lucio or Pharah or something, but you'd be wrong. Doomfist is without a doubt the best boopster in this whole Overwatch, and you should use his booping a lot. Now, I touched on this a fair bit already when I was talking about matchups, especially stuff like Winston, Roadhog and D.VA, but I really wanted to take a bit of time to stress the point that Doomfist booping is seriously good and worth putting a lot of effort into getting good at. Now that you know how good the air slam is from the unscripted movement section, bear that sort of capability in mind when you think about how easy it is for Doomfist to put himself on the side of the enemy that lets him boop that enemy into the hole or hazard. If Doomfist is already at the hole, he basically has free access to any position that he needs to be in order to boop someone into it. Now, slam and uppercut is of course the most sensible option for your booping, but often you'll need to add in a rocket punch to get them into the hole. Obviously this is sinking your entire kit, and you should consider whether or not you can survive 4 seconds with no movement after you do this. If you can't, then you should consider whether or not it's worth taking that trade anyway, because sometimes it is. You can also boop with just a rocket punch or just the uppercut if you get the opportunity, but it is a lot more rare. Be aware of how far forward the abilities push the enemies, and how much air or non-stunned time they will get after being hit in order to react. So for instance, if you punch a Winston into a hole and he's got his leap ready, that stun is going to end before he dies from the hole. And of course, I've already said this at some point in this guide, I can't remember, but D.Va and Orisa do not get pushed back as far as the other enemies when they are firing. So bear that in mind, and that's all I have to say about whoops.
Chasing little noobs.
Okay, one last little tip. Chase enemies and stagger them when you have the opportunity. Doomfist is really fast. Sometimes he's the fastest character in the game depending on the environment and the cooldowns. And he's, I would say, the second best hero for chasing and securing stagger frags that the team otherwise wouldn't have after the Tricky Tracer. There's not much to say about the actual mechanics of getting this done. I just wanted to point it out that it's a great thing to bear in mind and also show you guys some example clips. And just while some of these clips roll in the background, and there's probably some extra B-roll that I'll chuck in here, I want to take a little moment to talk about how I got these clips for this video. Obviously they're from my gameplay, but when hunting for these clips I was going for stuff that showcase a variety of ways to use Doomfist effectively and sensibly to get various things done that actually benefit the team. If there's only one thing that you learn from this entire video, I hope it's that you should die less unless you're trading and trading well. Build your game sense up, pay attention to everything, know your play, and get good at Doomfist.
Canned responses for when people criticize you.
Doomfist, can you hit again?
We don't need a hit scan.
Doomfist doesn't count as soldier, you fucking idiot.
Bro, I have more hours in Doomfist than you have in the whole Overwatch.
Guys, we have a Doomfist, we have to play around and pick dive heroes.
No you don't, bro. Just play what you like.
Dude, that Tracer's owning you.
Bitch, I'm coming for you.
People don't dislike you for you, they dislike you for playing a situational hero 99% of the time that forces the rest of your team to change to a common mode that you. That makes the game unfun for most other players that encounter you. Given that people literally make account names Nastic and avoid playing with you, I wanted to see what you were like for myself before I made judgments, and you haven't really done anything to change my mind.
Kick you some more.
Hey everyone guys, thanks for watching this really long YouTube video that I've made about the Doomfist character in Overwatch from Blizzard. So this guide, I made this because I thought there's a whole bunch of, other guides out there for Doomfist that are either, made by people that have some ideas that I don't agree with, or maybe there's some really bad format to it. I know there was a guy called X something or other, he made this guy is called the Most Advanced Doomfist Guide or something like that, and this is fairly well viewed on YouTube. That's up there, but it's in like a really inconvenient format to watch, so I wanted to make something that was comprehensive, easy to follow, and correct. I don't want to use the word correct, but I hope you know what I mean. Just I don't want to encourage people to come at Doomfist with this same mentality that they seem to be coming at it with at the moment. That's giving him this bad reputation. He's not an underpowered character. Well, yeah, he probably is an underpowered character a little bit, but not like drastically so, like Symmetra or something like that, where it's actually a problem that you would play him a lot. People are have misconception about Doomfist that he's bad situational character like Symmetra, but it's just because people are so reckless with him that they give him this bad reputation. It really is this, and I really think that's the case. I think that if more people in higher ranks put the time in to work Doomfist out for properly in his current state, not in his fucking season 5 state or whatever, they would see that he's actually like nice, fairly well balanced hero that has fantastic potential and he's super good. Well, I hope you get where I'm coming from. Yeah, I wanna help Doomfist not have this terrible reputation, and I just felt obliged to make this video because people requested it from me, and I felt like I'd probably be able to do a fairly good job of it. Yeah, I do hope it helps out. I feel like I've put a bunch of stuff on the table that will switch up what you, the viewer who has come all this way through this video. I haven't put it together yet. This is being recorded before I've done the editing and shit, so this is probably going to be like a 40-minute video in my hazardous guess by looking at this long ass script right now. 11,500 words, probably 50, maybe even 60-minute video. You who have stuck through all this because you actually care a bit about learning Doomfist and that kind of thing, I'm speaking to you. I hope that I've put something on the table that is different to what you had in mind ahead of time, and I hope it's something that you can use to have heaps and heaps of fun with this hero. Don't take that comedy bit just before too seriously. I don't necessarily want to encourage everyone to be a one trick like I am. If you want a one trick, that's great, go be a one trick. If you don't want to be a one trick, that's great too, you don't do that. My opinion on one tricks, person that wrote this quote, their opinion on one tricks, that's not relevant to this. Don't give a shit about that. So that is a completely different story to all of this. This is just about how to use Doomfist well, roles, matchups, and miscellaneous tips and tricks about the movement and stuff. Clearing up misconceptions was my main goal with this video. So anyway, enough about this. Thanks for watching, everybody's. Have a good day or night and enjoy playing the Doomfist character. Bye.